One of the best things about Marvel Snap is the large variety of awesome different decks you can play and be successful with. If you are looking to climb the ladder though, and win as many games as possible, you want to make sure that you are playing one of the strongest archetypes around, and that just so happens to be Shuri. Shuri is insanely powerful, I'm sure you've seen it all over the place, and there's a good reason for that. If you don't know how to properly play this deck, and play around it, you're gonna have a hard time on the ladder. Thankfully, that's where I come in today. My name is Ethan for the Gamer, and today we're gonna talk about how to play the Shuri Zero deck in Marvel Snap. So the Shuri and Zero deck is pretty simple to play, leading to a high popularity on the ladder. You can expect to see this deck a lot as you climb, especially as you get into the higher ranks. If you've just gotten your hands on Shuri and you're looking for the best deck to play with it, well, here it is. So the core of the deck revolves around Shuri, of course, which is the namesake card, which on reveal will double the power of the next card you play. This is a super powerful card, which is no surprise to anyone as to why it's so powerful. Other core cards include Zero, which will remove the abilities of the next card you play. Now that's a quote-unquote downside for a lot of cards, but we're making use of this by playing cards that we don't want to have abilities, namely cards like Red Skull. So normally this has the negative effect of making the enemy cards at this location have 1 power, but if you use Zero, it's just a 5 energy 13 card. But if you play Shuri, that makes it a 26 power card. You can already see the combos of this deck and why it's so powerful. The next core card of this deck is Taskmaster, which is going to set this card's power equal to the last card you played. This essentially lets us get double value from our Shuri. So like if we did the line before where we play the Shuri, doubling the next card, we play Red Skull, making this a 26 power, Taskmaster becomes a 26 power card as well, which is going to be hard for your opponent to beat. Now other important cards of this deck as well would be cards like She-Hulk. So She-Hulk is normally a 6 energy 9 power card, but it costs 1 less for each unspent energy last turn. So a lot of times this will cost between 1 and 3 energy, being a 9 power card, which is super powerful. We're making use of being able to save mana as well by playing cards like Sunspot. Since Sunspot will gain a power for every unspent energy we used, if you play Sunspot early, save some energy, and then you can play She-Hulk, making it free or cheap. That leads to some very powerful turns. She-Hulk being a 9 power card as well is also just a completely fine target for Shuri, because it'll become 18 power, which is huge. Now some other cards that really combo well with Zero would be things like Ebony Maw and Lizard. Ebony Maw is an incredible card if you can get it down early and if it doesn't have its negative effect. Normally Ebony Maw has the ongoing effect where you can't play cards here, but if you play Zero first, it's just a 1 energy 7 power card, which is a huge tempo swing. It's very perfectly fine to play this early if your opening hand has like a Zero and an Ebony Maw, or you have them just early in your hand together. A Zero into Ebony Maw is a completely great play. We're also playing Lizard. Lizard's normally fine just on its own. It's a powerful, great card, but if you do have nothing else to play with Zero, Lizard's a fine target as well. Another card that I think is pretty core to the deck is Armor. Since we are playing gigantic cards, we're really susceptible to things like Shang-Chi, and Armor will make sure that those cards stay alive. Armor will also protect Sunspot from things like Killmonger, which we see a lot of right now on the ladder. Cosmo's just another great card. It can shut down a lot of things like Galactus, Shang-Chi as well, and other just annoying cards. It's great to put into a lane against destroy decks as well, if you know that they've played like a Hood, Wolverine, things that they want to hit with their Carnage. You can just put down Cosmo and ruin their day. 2 big flex spots in this deck for this list I'm playing would be Arrow and Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel's a pretty cool card, especially when used with Shuri, just because it becomes a 12 power card and can jump to lanes that you couldn't play in or that your opponent didn't play in as well. Oftentimes your opponent's not going to be thinking about playing around a Captain Marvel, especially a 12 power Captain Marvel, so playing this with Shuri can be super good, and even just playing it on curve is great. Her being able to just win games at the end is a very powerful effect. Arrow's another flex spot. It did recently get nerfed. It used to move all of the enemy cards that were played. Now it only moves 1. A lot of times though, when you have a big lane with a huge Red Skull or She-Hulk or whatever, you can just win the game if you play your Arrow in the last turn to protect it again against things like Shang-Chi or a big thing like a Galactus or stuff like that. So another great card. Other things you can think about playing in this deck would be like Sauron. Enchantress also fits this deck really well since it can cancel out the negative effects of our Red Skull or Lizard, and can also shut down their other ongoing cards. If you see things like Kazar or Iron Man, stuff like this, Enchantress can really swing those games. So it's another great choice as well. And you can even play something down like Typhoid Mary. Since we are playing Zero and we can get rid of the negative effect, Typhoid Mary just becomes a 4 mana 10 card or a 4 mana 20 with Shuri, which is quite good value. Another reason this deck is so powerful though is it's very straightforward to play. The general idea of the deck is just negate the negative effects of your cards, like Red Skull and Ebony Maw with your Zero, to give you a ton of tempo and power, and then use Shuri to get huge cards at the end of the game, and usually that's enough to win. The big things to look out for, again, like I said, is making sure you use your armor very carefully and in the right places. Make sure you put this in the lane where you want to put your big cards to protect against Shang-Chi, or if you think they're going to be playing Killmonger, protect your Sunspot, and use your Cosmo effectively to shut down cards that also could beat you. And also, another big important thing is make sure you remember that Taskmaster exists and that it is going to copy the last card you played. So ordering really matters, especially with things like Zero, Red Skull, all of that. You want to make sure that the last card you played is your big card so that your Taskmaster doesn't copy Zero or Sunspot or something and it makes you very sad. A very, very powerful line in this deck is play Shuri on 4, skip turn 5, and then on turn 6 you can get a double-powered She-Hulk into a Taskmaster that copies that power, which is a huge swing. One major downside of this deck, though, is your game plan is not going to be a secret. Once you play down Shuri, your opponent knows exactly what you're doing. This is a very common deck. A lot of people have played against it. I'm sure you have as well. So you have to play around knowing that your opponent is going to know exactly what you're doing. But as long as you make good use of your tech cards, your armor, Cosmo, arrow, stuff like that, you should have no problem mastering this deck and climbing the ladder. Well, that's all there is to this deck. Thank you so much for watching this video. Hopefully you found it helpful. Make sure you check out thegamer.com for all things gaming, and we'll see you in the next video.